I wanted to thank everyone today for joining our Realtor panel. Usually this is something we do in person. We miss those events, but glad we're able to do this today virtually, and hopefully it will be really helpful. So this, just to let everyone know, this is going to be recorded. So if anybody wants it after the presentation is over, just let me know. We're also going to try to send it to those that were interested but had conflicts for today. So I guess we can go ahead and get started. I've come up with a list of topics for us to talk through, as well as some questions. Like I said before, I have all the attendees muted, and we'll keep it that way till the end. And if we have some time for questions, we'll do questions at the end. And if we run out of time, we can always get back to you. You can either email myself or one of the panelists with your questions, and we'll be happy to get back with you. So let's get started. So today, I want to just introduce our panelist. We've got David Dew from Isabel K. Horsley Real Estate, Bo Bragg from Bragg and Company Real Estate, and Doug Dorsey from Shaheen, Ruth Martin, and Fonville Real Estate. So if you guys, I guess I'll turn it over to you. And David, if you want to get started, if each of you would just kind of introduce yourselves, your firms, and kind of let us know a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is David Dew. I'm born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. Met my wife, Katie Horsley, at Randolph-Macon College. I was a senior. She was a sophomore, so she snagged me on the way out. And she wanted to move to Richmond after college. And I found out she lived in a place called Kilmarnock, Virginia. So after taking a ride down 64 and seeing what God's country had to offer, I quickly nixed the idea of moving back to my home area of Richmond, and we located in the Northern Neck in 2002. My wife's grandmother, Isabel Horsley, started our firm 46 years ago. So we're now third generation running the business. We've got 4 offices in Deltaville, Matthews, Urbana, and Whitestone, 32 agents, and we love what we do, eat, breathe, and sleep it. And very happy to be invited back for this symposium.
Glad to have you. Thank you. Bo, you want to go next?
Sure. Bo Bragg. I'm the principal broker and owner, and also a Class A contractor. Our firm was started, the real estate side of our firm was started by my mother, Barbara, in the 80s. She's 75, and she's still a very active agent, broker, I should say. My father started the construction and land development arm in the 70s. They merged together in the 80s, and we have now a full service brokerage, construction and land development company. I kind of wear both hats. We've got an office in Irvington and an office in Kilmarnock. I grew up here. I'm a native, grew up in Irvington. After business school at William & Mary, I went into real estate capital markets, where I was all over the country on planes, lending money to big developers, doing all kinds of residential and commercial projects. And my last stop was in DC, and my wife said, the kids are 2 and 3. We're going to live somewhere south of the Mason-Dixon line. You pick it, but it's not going to be in a big city. So we had the opportunity to move here and join the family business. Did that 16 years ago, and kids were very young. Fast forward to today, I've got one at Dartmouth and another one that's going to Dartmouth in the fall, and I can't believe how much time has flown by. But we love what we do. We've got a great team, and we just love working with our clients, both buyers and sellers. I live in Irvington again today at this point in Carter's Creek with my family.
Great. Thank you, Bill. You're up next, Doug.
Okay, thanks for scheduling this. Appreciate it. I have a mom at RWC for the last 5 years, and I wanted to thank you all for doing a great job of being a good steward to her before the pandemic, and certainly while it's going on. I have been a broker for almost 40 years. Our original office opened here in '93. It was Virginia Landmark, became Select Properties, and recently we've become Shaheen, Ruth Martin, and Fonville. The controlling consistency with that has been, we've always had an office both in the Northern Neck and also in Richmond. And if you buy into the fact that 60% of the buyers come from Richmond, it's been a nice cross-marketing thing to have. We now just opened an office in Williamsburg too. So, any rate, it's been a nice run to be here in Irvington, and happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again for joining. So now we'll get into kind of some topics here. Our first is going to be about COVID-19 and how that's kind of changed the real estate market. Lots of people went from working in the office to working from home, kids having to do schooling at home as well. The low interest rates that came with that. So I guess if each of you just want to talk about the current state of, the real estate market and how it's changed recently, specifically because of COVID-19. So, Bo, you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. We actually don't get everything right all the time, but collectively at one of our sales meetings in late February or early March, we were talking about COVID, and we came to the consensus among ourselves that this was actually going to be really good for the area. And it turned out to be just that, as we all know, from a real estate perspective. It's been an off the charts kind of year at this point. We've never seen record levels of sales like this or pricing the way we've seen it. But with that came, specifically to your question, a need for remote working and online schooling. My son was on his spring break from Dartmouth when he got the call not to come back. So it was a good transition for him. But suddenly there was, all of us back in the house. My daughter was at Christ Church, was told not to come back as a day student. So she's been remote learning the entire year. And then, of course, early pandemic, we weren't using the offices. We were all working remotely. So my wife and I, our two kids were in this house, and I knew exactly the way my clients felt. They needed space. So, suddenly it wasn't so much about things like pools and, outdoor fireplaces. It was, where are all of our offices going to be in the home? And do we have incredibly high-speed internet? So, where's Atlantic broadband in this area? That was the number one question that pops up, these days. Where's my office going to be in the house? Let's go find that first when we're taking our tour through the home, and tell me about the internet. We saw a mass exodus of people coming out of DC, New York, Richmond. That was due to COVID. Then it was civil unrest and things that we were seeing on Monument Avenue in Richmond, for example, and in a military kind of state in the spring in DC. I would pick up my phone 10 times a day, and I knew exactly what they were going to say to me. I need to get out of the city. I need to retreat. I need to get away, whether it's permanent or at least a place that I can escape to. Rates are low. We don't want to be here. We need to get away at least temporarily. And that is exactly the way it's been for exactly about a year now. There's no inventory, as you guys know. There are low interest rates, and there's huge demand. And unfortunately, the would-be sellers aren't selling because they want to have their house for the same reason the would-be buyer wants it. They don't want to leave the country.
Right.
So we have a real, very interesting first time ever kind of supply and demand curve in the Northern Neck. I don't think any of us have ever seen in our lifetimes.
Anybody else have something to add? David or Doug?
I would say that also, besides buyers buying here, we've also seen a big uptick, if you will, in people who have second homes here that reside in DC, Maryland, Richmond, et cetera, that all of a sudden now they're using their second homes here as full-time homes. And you can drive through Food Lion or TriStar parking lot and notice all the different license plates that have been here almost regularly now for a year. So what that's done also too for the construction industry is contractors who weren't doing too many new builds for new construction were all of a sudden doing a lot of kitchen remodels, bathroom remodels, adding on, because people were staying here and using this more as a full-time home. So I think the construction industry, and it's driven material costs up now. So it costs more now to build a home than it did pre-COVID. Just like Bo said, inventory is low on the existing housing side. So it's completely flipped from a buyer's market now to a seller's market. And, we tell sellers that, if you want to sell your home, the day we push submit and activate it, be ready for contracts. Not like the old days where you might have a couple weeks or a couple months to get ready. Now we've got multiple offers coming in, bidding wars, and stuff that we haven't seen here since 02 to 06.
Yeah, I would just add that, I think the Bo's hit it on the head. They want to know, do you have high-speed internet? Can I buy the furniture and can I buy the boat on the lift? I mean, they really want to move in and have a lifestyle, and they're leaving places for a quality of life down here that, as been mentioned. I mean, you realize that this is not just a Friday night to Monday morning town. There's a whole lot of stuff going on that's wonderful, and they've all realized that and told their friends and showed up in mass, as we've seen. And I think that's true of pretty much a lot of these smaller towns up and down the East Coast, from what I gather, talking to a lot of people and visiting those as well. So it's a great quality of life, and people want a part of it.
A couple of you mentioned, the internet being a big deal for a lot of buyers. And I read an article recently on the Northern Neck Broadband Project grant. Are you guys familiar with that, or how that might help the area?
Lauren, I think my knowledge of it, it's more geared towards getting into areas where there is absolutely no option for internet, where you can't get satellite, where you can't get HughesNet, where you can't get anything at all. So I think that's kind of phase one of it. There are homes that do have internet access, but it may be via satellite. So there may not be speed sufficient enough for some owners to run their business out of their home, who might need 200 megs per second download speed versus 20 or 30 on a satellite system. So I think the initiative is great, and I hope that they follow through with it. I don't know how it's going to boost speeds in the areas that really need them right now, but I think the grant funding is there, and at least they're moving forward on the project.
Yeah, hopefully that will get on its way soon. Another question related to, COVID-19 real estate market. So, the vaccine rollout is on its way now. And do we expect the real estate market to change as we hopefully return to some sort of normalcy, as that, the rollout becomes more and more?
We talk about this all the time. No one has a crystal ball, excuse me. But, if you look at the speculative nature that drove sales in the 2002-06 timeframe, we are in a totally different market. The reason, for our increase in prices and our low inventory has nothing to do with speculation. It's all organic, demand. And will we all get vaccinated, and will some percentage of people who bought down here decide they want to go back to a normal life? They don't want to live in the Northern Neck, of course. I'm sure that some percentage will, go back to normal. But, there are enough people who have discovered this area through COVID that are so fascinated and just can't believe that they didn't do this sooner or find out about this place sooner. There's a huge stickiness to this, and by that I mean a lot of those people are going to stay here for sure. We're forecasting higher prices. We're looking at 10 to 12% price increases at Bragg & Company over the next year and a half. That's barring some macro event that none of us control, of course, right? What the Iraqis do with a nuclear program, things like that, of course, that could crush a market. Barring any of that, just organic increases in prices, that's what we're seeing. We saw, from April 1st of 2020 to today, we saw right at a 12% price increase for waterfront and off-water homes. And we expect to see that again over the next year, mainly because of no inventory. If you look at, it's Econ 101, if you look at the supply curve and the demand curve, without having any supply, and we have, at any one time, I've got, and I know everybody here, David and Doug can say the same thing, we have tons of buyers that text us every day saying, is there anything new on the market? When you have that kind of demand, it can only drive prices a little bit further. What worries me is that they'll get a little out of whack, and it's not healthy for the market. I would like to see, I'd like to see things plateau a little bit. I'd like to see some supply come on the market, and I'd like to see, demand stay the same, or sort of temper out a little bit so we can not create a bubble atmosphere. But I don't think, long story short, no, Lauren, I do not see this changing greatly. I do not see people mass exiting the Northern Neck and going back. It's been a lifestyle change that's occurred for these people, and they wish they'd done it sooner.
Thank
I
you.
think the only thing that'll slow the market will be rising interest rates, which we've seen a little bit of, but I think as long as the economy stays strong and the rates are below 5%, really, the quality of life isn't changing down here. And I think that's demand. That's why this demand is strong. I mean, if you're going to borrow money, I don't know what you're waiting for on top of trying to find a nice town to live in. But I don't see, I agree with Bo. I don't see any reason why we should see any change, and it should get stronger.
We are seeing a lot of new building, Lauren. I think everyone here would agree that we're selling waterfront land at a pace we haven't seen in 15 some years. And I know on the construction side, we've never, our estimators have never bid so much work, since at least since I've been involved in the company. And David is correct in that, what will temper that somewhat is the crazy pricing on building materials. But in the absence of being able to buy something, there are people buying land and building right now, big time.
Another question, with COVID going on, and, people are concerned about, their health and the safetiness of everything. So if you guys could talk a little bit about how, or if that's changed when you guys are doing showings, or how, any protocols that you have in place to keep the clients and the sellers and buyers, safe because of COVID.
Yeah, well, we, I'm sure with Doug and Bo too, the firm has adopted CDC guidelines for being safe with all precautionary measures, from wearing face masks, wiping down disinfectant wipes any surfaces touched by anybody, making sure we screen the buyers, prospective buyers coming in town, asking the questions, where have you been? Have you been in contact with anybody? So I think we're going above and beyond, and buyers appreciate that, as do the sellers. I think more of a diligent record keeping too of any showings. In the event somebody who looked at a house did come down with COVID, we'd have a tracing spreadsheet to go back with.
Yeah.
I think everybody here on the panel too has probably done more virtual tour walkthroughs with buyers via FaceTime or just a video versus in person, because I've had several buyers with COVID stuck in a home quarantining, but they wanted to see a couple homes. So I've gone and previewed the home and done a FaceTime walkthrough virtual tour of them. So we're seeing a lot more of that too, where the buyer may not be comfortable physically coming into the area and looking. So I'd say the internet has really helped out, and technology with that as well too. But I think across the board, even homes that I've showed of other agents, all parties on both sides really taking precautionary measures to make sure that everyone's protected, and a very low chance of transmission of COVID.
That's great. Sounds like you guys are, doing what would make everyone feel comfortable. So that's great. Well, before we move on to the next slide, does anybody else have any comments about the current state of the market before we move on to the next slide? All right. So next, we're going to just talk about selecting a realtor. What advice would you give our attendees today when they're trying to select a realtor? Doug, do you want to get us started on this topic?
Sure. I think a lot of it has to do with just getting along personality wise. I mean, you should always probably talk to 2 or 3 that you've heard about, read about, or referred to, and get their opinion on who they are, what they're doing, what they think your pricing should be, how they're going to introduce it to the market, et cetera. But I think it's just like anything, picking a dentist, or, you find somebody you're comfortable with, that you trust, and personalities are personalities, and they match up differently. And there's plenty of great agents in the area that you can in fact go interview. So that would be my advice.
And another question related to, this topic, the other option, if you're not selecting a realtor to sell your house, is you're going to try to sell it yourself. So can you guys give us and maybe some reasons why that might not be the best idea and why having, a realtor would be a better option?
I actually have a very recent experience on that that I'd like to share. There are a lot of reasons why you shouldn't try to sell your house yourself. Probably the most primary reason is how many hundreds of thousands of dollars you may leave on the table because you really don't understand how to value an asset. It's not your core competency. It's not what you do for a living. And that's why, there's an industry like the real estate industry, realtors that are there for you. There's a nice little neighborhood that we developed on the Rappahannock River and the confluence of the Carrollton River and Weems. And I have a lot of buyers, and I had this one particular buyer who wanted to had that kind of view. And as soon as a for sale by owner came on Zillow, I called him and said, you need to get down here immediately because this house is not priced correctly. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, I think it's about $250,000 under market. And they couldn't believe it. And they said, all right, we're on our way. I called the owner, and he told me he'd pay me a commission if I sold it. He said, I've got 15 phone calls this morning to see this house. And I said, yeah, thinking to myself, I bet you do. We were able to get in the door first and made a very clean offer. So he canceled the rest of his appointments and accepted our full price offer. And about 3 weeks later, I put a similar age house 3 doors down, same square footage, same vintage, same view, had a pool just like this one, pretty much kind of the same house for $250,000 over the price that he had priced at. He was right at $1 million, and we priced ours at $1,250,000. And we sold it the day it went on the market. One of our agents in house brought in his full cash, all cash, full price offer. That guy is looking at this, and he just left $250,000 on the table. So if that's not a reason to hire a realtor, I don't know what is.
Yes. Well, great example.
There are, of course, a million other reasons why you should, hire a good realtor and experience their negotiating skills, how their knowledge of the market, their knowledge of local color and the waterways, being a good facilitator and being able to deliver good information to both the buyers and the sellers, and being able to advise them on, home repairs. And, the biggest challenge I see right now that I am really doing a tremendous amount of due diligence and then telling all of my agents to do so is there are so many buyers in the marketplace right now, more than we've ever seen. And they're not all qualified. There are a lot of people that are down here they want to buy a house, and because their neighbors are buying a house in DC down here, so they want to buy one. And you really need to be, as an agent for your seller, you need to be very thorough looking through and doing your due diligence on how well capitalized they are. Do they have a bank letter? How, was it a pre-approval letter and not just a pre-qual letter? Will they actually, does the bank underwriting department has actually looked at their asset, their income, and given them a good letter that means something? Do they have proof of funds that they can show you? And whether it's just for the deposit or whether it's for the, an all cash deal. So there's some vetting that needs to be done with all these buyers here to protect our sellers. And that's been the biggest change I've seen in the last 6 months when it's examining a would-be buyer for one of our sellers' houses.
Yeah, finding buyers is not that difficult. Getting it closed is the goal of everybody, and therein lies the value, I think, of a real estate agent, is to help, as Bo said, all the variables that come along and get it closed. I mean, we used to be real estate agents used to be gatekeepers of the information. Now the public has access to everything we have, so they know what's on the market. They know if they do their homework, what it's worth. But getting in the front door to getting the keys at closing is not as easy as it used to be. And therein lies the value in my mind.
Lauren, I would just add, from a seller's perspective, there are a lot of things involved in a sale transaction of a piece of property. There's legal disclosures, there's inspections, There's environmental issues that unless a seller is proficient in the sales process, they may not know some things that you have to disclose by law or you have to perform by contract. So I would say just legally too, it's well worth a seller's investment to hire a realtor to protect them from liability and maybe against themselves for just not knowing the process.
Great. Thank you guys for that. So next, we're going to talk about preparing, your home for sale. There's many things involved when you're trying to prepare your home for sale, and some people want to fix things up before they put it on the market. Some are considering getting appraisals or home inspections done before they do that. It's hard to know where to start. So what would you guys recommend with that? David, do you want to get started on that question?
Sure. I think once you have selected the realtor you're comfortable with moving forward on, I think most all these questions should be a case-by-case basis between you and your realtor. There are some folks that I would recommend possibly staging on their home, some I wouldn't. But I don't think it's a blanket you need to or you don't need to. I think it's a case-by-case basis. And really that's where your comfort level with your realtor and trusting and their ability to position you in the best way possible with pricing, with fixing up, painting, staging, deferred maintenance issues. Your realtor can really go through the home and tell you what needs to be done as a necessity before it goes in the market and what things you may be able to get away with not doing immediately and possibly using that as offsetting your pricing or offering a credit. A lot of people say, well, should I get rid of this carpet in this room or should I redo my kitchen? And depending on the situation, the realtor may say, well, you can do that, but whatever you put in, the next buyer might not like it. So why don't you offer a credit at closing, let the buyer do what they want to. So again, I think it's all a case-by-case basis, depending on your situation and the recommendations of your realtor.
Looks like everyone else agrees. Anybody else have anything else to add?
Yep.
All right.
That's right on.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about home inspections just then, and one specific question is kind of what are you seeing as the biggest issue, when it comes to having those home inspections done while house is under contract? Is anything popping up that people should be, trying to do ahead of time before they put their house on the market?
Yeah. So everyone knows how wet it's been this year. And gosh, septic inspections, I've never seen so many fail. And they see David nod his head. I think David and I had a deal. It's $1.5 million house on Clark Point that we were 2 months past closing. And luckily his sellers and my buyers were very patient and waited for us to get through the weather and get it all put back together. But I've never seen so many septic inspections fail in my life this year. It's just wet and there's no place for the water to go. So we put a house under contract, one of our clients that's a seller the other day, and we went ahead and had it inspected as soon as it went under contract. Sure enough, found out there's some issues. So we're going to get ahead of the curve and get it corrected now. That and crawl spaces for the same reason. It's been so wet. A lot of us have moisture in our crawl space and we never had before. So at a minimum, I'd always suggest getting the crawl space checked out. All of us have our own inspectors we like to use, and they'll oftentimes do it as a courtesy to us because we give them so much business. They'll come in and check the crawl space out as a pre-inspection and tell us if we have any issues we need to take care of. I don't think I never used to do septic pre-inspections, but if you've got an old one or you're in a low-lying area, I'd recommend doing that too. It's only a few $100. It's not the end of the world. And at least you can dodge a bullet and not have people walk away from something that you've already taken care of. You can certainly do a pre-inspection of the entire house. If it's an older house and a lot of deferred maintenance, you may want to do that. It's like David said earlier, that's kind of like a case-by-case basis as well. Sometimes we'll recommend it, sometimes we won't. At a minimum, I recommend that crawl space get inspected though.
Yeah, it's generally things that people don't look at, which is crawling under their house. As long as their toilet's flushing, they don't really know if the septic distribution box is broken, cracked, or missing, or whatever. So I agree with Bo, and I'm sure David does too. Those are two of the biggest issues. And then with the water, you get the mold, which is another issue for people for obvious reasons. So.
All right. Thanks for that advice. I'm sure that's helpful and very true. It's very, at least the sun is shining today. So, all right. So next, I just want to talk about, a lot of people, a lot of the attendees on today's call are interested in moving to RWC at some point. And just wanted to remind you guys that it's important for you all to let us know when you've listed your house for sale so that we can help the transition to RWC easier. We want to make sure that you'll be able to move into the type of unit that you like and you're comfortable with, but also want it to make sure that that it's a process and it can take some time, and especially in today's market with houses being put on the market and selling so fast, like you guys are saying, there is a process at RWC that you have to go through that can take some time and involves, a medical financial evaluation and approval, as well as, renovations that need to be done once you've been approved. And we let our residents, be a part of that renovation process. So just wanted to remind you all about that. Also, we do have, freestanding homes, cottages, apartments, lots of different floor plans and layouts for each of those types of homes. For those of you that aren't Rappahannock Club members on this call, I'd really encourage you to join up for our Rappahannock Club, which is our priority wait list. It's $1,000 to join, and that can be totally refundable if something changes and you decide to stay at home or go somewhere else. So I would at least encourage you, if you're not already, to join the Rappahannock Club. Make an appointment with me if you want. I'd be happy to set up a time to meet with each of you. We are allowing appointments here. We have protocols set in place for safety reasons for visitors. And, I'd be happy to show you what we have available or get you on the list for something that you're interested in the future. So I've listed my contact information here. If you're not comfortable with coming on campus, we are trying to get more virtual tours up on our website, so you can check that out as well. So let's see. So now I guess.
What is the availability right now?
Right now we have cottage. We have a cottage available, a 1-bedroom cottage, as well as a 1-bedroom apartment. The houses are, very popular. So there is a waiting list for that right now. And it's really weird because since I've been working here, it seems like every year the people that are on our wait list comes up with a new, thing that they want. Like one year it was 1-bedroom apartments. Another year it was 2-bedroom, 2-bath cottages. And it seems like this year it's houses. And that's not for everybody, but that's just kind of the trend that we've been seeing this year. So it'll be interesting to see next year what it will be. And we never know what's going to become available next. It's just hard to tell. So that's why it's important to get on the wait list so that you have more of a choice, when you're ready.
Lauren, can I say one thing real quick? Just a kind of a testimonial for how lucky we are to have RWC in our area. A lot of folks over the years have retired to our area. And when they reach a transitional point in their life where they need to move out of their waterfront home or they need to move closer to some continuing care, it's great having y'all's campus right here in our backyard. And we've found, and I'm sure Doug and Bo can attest to this, we have found pockets of different owners and friends who all of a sudden are selling their home because their neighbor is selling their home and moved to RWC, or their bridge club, two widows are selling their home and moved to RWC. So it's really a community thing, and people continue their lifelong friendships that they have made since moving down here over to RWC. So I just want to thank you all for what you do, because it's really an asset to our area, offering, a little bit for everybody, from the people who want to use this area as a second home or primary home, but at a point in their life when they need to make a transition, instead of forcing them to move out of the area which they have grown to love in the Northern Neck, they can stay here and still have all the amenities that they've been accustomed to. So y'all doing a great job.
Thank you for that. Yep.
It's a huge draw for the area. I mean, that's back to the beginning questions. Why are people considering? I mean, they know that it's right there and they decide that the hospital's here, and a lot of little communities don't have those kind of assets. I agree with David.
And what's been really cool too, we opened up in 1985, and, over the past couple of years, we've been seeing a lot of second generation people come through. So their parents lived here, and, now they want to live here. And it's just really cool to see that going on in the community. So. Well, I guess before we get to the attendees' questions, if you guys, the panelists, if you have any last comments you want to leave before we start taking questions, that would be great.
I'd like to, one last comment I would have is just, you got, 3 great brokers on the Zoom call here. It doesn't have to be one of us. There are other good agents out there, but I would just encourage you when it comes to sell to make sure you work with a local agent. We've seen a tremendous amount of agents from other areas because they don't have any inventory, and they have buyers and they know how popular our area is. They're coming here and they're representing buyers and sellers, and they put lock boxes on houses, and you call them in Northern Virginia and they tell you the code, and you go show the property. They're not there to tell us anything about it. They're collecting a nice commission, and they're not there selling and taking care of the security of the house for their client. They're not making sure it's buttoned up and locked up when they leave. They count on us to do that, which of course we do, but what if it's an agent that's forgetful? You owe it to yourself to put yourself in the hands of a knowledgeable broker here in the local community that's got ties to this area and networks and has the buyers, but also just, is looking out for your best interest and taking, a personal approach to selling your home.
I would only add that, when we opened our office in the early 90s, the entire market was about $15 million in sales over about 150 transactions. And then last year it was over 305 million, over 860 sales. And to Bo and David's points and my point, I mean, it's only going to continue to get better, particularly when you talk to folks who live on Long Island Sound or Annapolis, and they see not only what the real estate costs, but if they have a boat at the end of their dock, what's the cost to get it fixed? So we are still in just a great sweet spot. And as we all on this call know, it's a wonderful place to be. And I think we'll see those numbers continue on.
Great. Well, thank you guys again. Now we'll take some questions. If any of our attendees have any questions, please feel free to ask those now.
Hey, Lauren, it's Pete Clendenin. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Mr. Clendon.
Hi, how you doing? I have a question that I wouldn't surprise me if it's come up with other folks like me. I've got a nice house on the water, really like it, and I'm probably like many of you, just fell in love with this area, came here after living in Richmond for 40 years. I have children, and they've expressed an interest in inheriting my house. But I'm also looking at, as I sort of age up, going to Westminster, Canterbury or something like that. I'm trying to figure out a way to kind of handle both those needs. And, if my children would come down here and use the house a lot, I'd probably would write that into an inheritance of some type. But I'm curious how you handle that, or in dealing with your clients, you've come across that.
You mean as far as consulting with a realtor on how to value your house for? I'm not sure I'm following you exactly. Like, I mean, I think any of the realtors here would be happy, whether it meant a sale or a listing or not, for us, mean, we give back to the community and are certainly there to help people with real estate consultation, whether it means business for us or not. I think you could probably call on any of us and have a sit down with coffee and just, we'd be more than happy to, give you some of our time and knowledge if it helps out a family kind of transaction. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I think that's it. I guess it'd be basically valuing my house, and then creating a value, as part of my, will for whatever child would like to, sort of continue living in my house.
Yeah.
I think that's it. And a realtor's, I was trying to figure out if something like a Westminster Canterbury could help me with, or a realtor. It's probably a little bit of both.
I mean, I think, we deal with a lot of trust attorneys in our business. And that'd probably be my first recommendation is if you don't have a trust, would be to sit down and talk about cost basis on that asset and what it would transfer at, so that you'd have a good, tax implications would be, beneficial to you and your family when it comes to transferring real estate over. So, if you ever needed a recommendation on a local trust attorney to talk to about something like that and have a sit down with one of us, we'd be happy to do it.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
I would like to just add, I think one of the things that children forget is, they show up on Friday and jump in the pool and leave on Monday. And one of the costs, obviously, is the day-to-day to open that pool and make sure the dock is working and the boats, So one of those conversations with your children are regarding, this is what it, on a monthly basis, it costs to maintain this lifestyle, on top of obviously what the value of the house is. But I mean, I think oftentimes, myself included, I come jump in my parents' pool and, I'd leave, and then, I had no clue about what the ongoing maintenance might be. So that might be a great conversation to have with your children, is to share what it actually costs on a maintenance and day-to-day basis to operate a property. My advice.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
This is Margie Bean. I have a question about climate change and whether some of the buyers are starting to ask questions about frequency of storms, flooding, and how high the ground is, and those types of issues. Is that something that they're more interested in now?
Well, with the cost of what flood insurance has gone to these days, and the thought that it may not even be around, there's certainly people are recognizing that if they're buying something in the flood zone, that there is a cost involved, and it's probably going to go up. And I would say, yes, people are very cognizant and sometimes won't even get out of the car or go look at something if it's in a floodplain. So I think 10 years ago that was not the case, but I'm assuming that these guys would say the same thing, that there's a lot of people that are, whether it's climate change or anything, the water's going up, and folks know there's a cost involved with that too, and they want to know what it is, and it's sometimes hard to quantify, particularly going forward. So
I think everyone has a different risk profile. Certainly, David and I just put a lot under contract squarely in a flood zone on Windmill Point Road. And they're going to build, I assume, a $1 million plus house there. There's been a lot of misinformation too out there about climate change and what's really happening and how long it's going to take to happen. I think depending on your client, the buyers, they could be from the camp that, things are changing rapidly and they don't want to see anything in the flood zone. But then there are others that don't buy into it as much and are willing to buy a home in a flood zone or a lot in a flood zone and build it. Just take the proper precautions. Flood vents and engineering for a home in a flood zone is not complicated. But at the end of the day, if you can't sleep at night because you're going to be in a flood zone, then you're not going to be that kind of buyer. But that's lucky for us. There's all kinds of buyers and all kinds of different risk profiles.
Good question. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? All right, I'm not really seeing any other questions right now. I have listed up on the screen the emails and contact information for our panelists. So feel free to email them or call them or myself if you have any questions. So I think that about wraps it up for us today. So thank you all, our panelists and our attendees for joining. We hope this was helpful. I certainly enjoyed it, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.
Thanks,
Thank
Lauren.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.